So here we are back. We're doing some more Kubernetes Colearning. I wanted to start out during the break. I saw a chat from somebody in my team talking about Linux. There's users are asking about Linux at work, and this is somewhat related to the Kubernetes stuff because Kubernetes is fundamentally a Linux technology built on Docker, which is fundamentally a Linux technology. At the core, it's a Linux technology. You can't have Docker container. You can't have any CRI compatible container, compatible container unless you have Linux. So that means you have to have like some sort of emulation or whatever. So if you're running on a Mac, you're running on Windows, you're running Linux in order to get containers. You're doing it in some form of VM, some form of hypervisor in a VM. You might not see it, but it's definitely there because it doesn't work unless you have that. So the obvious consideration then, when Docker Desktop comes around and says, Docker Desktop is not free. Oops. Desktop is not free, FOSS. And they say it's like, so we can put it's not FOSS. Now charging. I mean, a lot of people have been streaming and talking about this. Now charging for it. It's not very much. It's like $5 a month, I think. But for an enterprise, it's a big deal, right? So it seems like my organization is a little bit slow on the upkeep on this whole. We've been talking about this for months now since they made the announcement, and now enterprises are coming around and they're asking a question. Oh, what are we going to do? They're going to start charging or start hitting us for this, and they're going to start monitoring, who's installing it and from where and from what IPs, and are those IPs belong to enterprises? And if they do, they're going to come after them for money. It wouldn't be, unreasonable for Docker to do that given the new policy. So that could be a big deal. I mean, if you've got like our company, lots and lots and lots of employees. I mean, tens of thousands of employees. If even 1% of them are using Docker Desktop, that's a huge chunk of change for them to come after that. The Docker organization is charging for Docker Desktop, and which is really crazy because they're making all their money off of C groups and all the stuff that came from Linux. So the reason that, I'm going to put it, this is the reason FOSS people hate Docker as a company, because Docker has continually profited off of advantages and builds and things that came from the Linux FOSS community. I mean, at its core, Docker is Linux. It's using C groups and a bunch of stuff that was invented by the Linux kernel team. It has nothing to do, actually it was invented before that, but it was implemented in Linux by the Linux core team. And it has nothing to do with Docker. So along comes Docker and says, hey, well, our interface, our java.net/whatever the fuck interface is worth the money. So they start charging for it. And they're like, hey, we're going to charge. Not to mention they drag their feet on supporting Kubernetes. And so the Kubernetes people actually really don't like Docker. Kubernetes people really don't like Docker. They have kind of a healthy, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you call it. They don't, it's not hate, they're just like annoyed by them. They've been trying to get rid of Docker as a dependency within Kubernetes for years, and they finally did it. The 1.2.2 is all gone completely. And then they started adding limits on the Docker Hub registry. They're acting like a company. They're acting like Canonical. They're acting like Red Hat. They're acting like Apple and Microsoft. It's completely within their rights to do that. But where does that leave you as an enterprise if all of a sudden you got to do something about it, right? Well, what does this have to do with a random chat from somebody asking how to support shared, network attached storage on Linux, which we got a question on that in our support queue. And it turns out that somebody is actually running Linux on an official laptop within our company, which, is nothing new to most of us. If I had known that I was going to be forced to use Windows at work, I would not have taken this job. And I am not exaggerating. If I had asked in my interview, and by the way, if you were going to go interview for a new position, make sure when they say, do you have any questions, you need to ask that question. Do you support Linux workstations for me to work on? If I run Linux at my workstation, is that supported? And if the answer is no, leave. Because if a company is telling you that they are going with Kubernetes because they want all of the advantages of containerization, and yet they don't enable their developer workforce or their engineering workforce to use Linux as a workstation, they're stupid, because they're trying to leverage the advantages of a technology on the one hand that they could have 10 times the advantage of that by allowing their enterprise workforce to use that same exact technology on their local desktops, if they know how. And so you have to have an official image. By the way, IBM, say what you want about them, but for the 10 or 15 years that I was at IBM, they allowed that. And they had an entire internal team that supported it. And you had to have the right images. You could even run your own image as long as you run their agent, compliance software, which is, their Tattletale software on your computer. So they had a package, you put it on there, you run it. That is the way to do enterprise Linux. IBM does it fantastically well. And now that they got Red Hat there, it's probably even better. So if you're going to work for an IT organization, big or small, and they don't let you use Linux on your laptop, leave before you get hired. So it's really interesting. How does this relate to the Docker desktop thing? I got a point here to make. So if all of a sudden you can't use Docker desktop anymore, if you can't use Docker desktop, the Linux that I use on my laptop every day, which is really amazing, is I use a container workspace container. I use a workspace container on Docker desktop, and all the networking and everything just works. I don't have to do any further configuration. It just works. It's as if I had a Linux laptop. It uses the VPN when it's on. It doesn't use the VPN when it's off, because Docker desktop automatically sets up the networking to match the networking, or at least to NAT the networking with the laptop. And that means that buggy programs like Cisco's AnyConnect will attach, and it will just work. Okay, so and it just works. Now, there are a lot of ways around that. And so I have, my good friend was telling me about how you can just use WSL without using a container environment and get it to work. But to do that, you have to write your own script, and you have to use OpenVPN, and you have to do a whole bunch of stuff to get it to work. So what are your options, right? In my case, one of the options that people have been putting out there is MiniCube. MiniCube doesn't work. MiniCube doesn't work. Because why? MiniCube comes with an embedded version of Docker and everything, but MiniCube is an entire VM. So you have to have VM software installed to even use it, which means, because it requires virtual machine software. And that virtual machine software may also be banished in your company. In my case, it is. In my case, running VMware on your laptop is not allowed. It's not allowed. So it doesn't work. You can't do it because it needs a driver. And even if it did work, it still wouldn't work, because it would still hit the VPN problem, because it's a separate subnet, and I'd have to figure out some crazy ass port forwarding and all of this stuff, right? So there is another option. So let your users / developers / engineers use Linux workstations. And if you allow this, the issue goes away. It supports the Docker driver, but then you have to have Docker installed, and you can't have Docker installed on Windows without Docker desktop. You see how that works? If you have some solution around that, let me know. So yeah, I mean, because it requires either Docker or VM software. In fact, the default driver, I've been using it all day on Minikube, is Docker now, which is a pretty big change. I want to say that change was brought about because of the pressure from the Kind. Kind is another, single node cluster that you can run locally. But yeah. So I do think it's cool that Minikube has Docker built into it. But in order to install Minikube, you have to install a hypervisor, whether it's Mac or Windows. And Windows has got it. I mean, Mac's got a different hypervisor for it. You have to put on, but you have to have a VM. You can't use Minikube without it unless you have Docker. And the whole point is you're trying to avoid installing Docker. You're trying to install Minikube to get Docker, right? So there's a lot of blogs out there right now that are telling you to do that instead of Docker desktop. That's the way to get around it. Well, that's not an option if you don't have the option to put VM software on your machine. And even if so, you might not want to do that because it's a little bit buggy. It's not completely supported. I mean, it's got other issues. So, I mean, I don't want to sometimes you kind of have to have a VM, right? But honestly, people, the easiest way to address this problem is to let your users use Linux workstations. And this is what's coming up now. If you let your users use Linux workstations, this problem evaporates. You have different problems, like how do I control this thing? The reason IT departments hate Linux is because they can't control it. It's Linux. They can't control it. They can't say, oh, you're going to put this virus software here and this thing. I mean, leave out the fact that most Linux installations, they do have bugs and viruses and stuff, but like the percentage, look at the CVEs, it's like teeny tiny compared to that. But you can do all kinds of shit on there. But enterprise IT is fucking terrified of Linux because of the freedom it gives to the end users, which makes you wicked productive and powerful. They always say, oh, it's going to like raise your costs for IT support. Like you're going to have all these people that don't know how to use Linux, blah, 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 blah. No. Red Hat, Ubuntu, Pop! OS, they've all proven that Linux on the desktop, to get shit done, to get work done, is better. Is it going to be able to run your game or whatever, Vulkan dependency you have built into your application? Can it run Slack? Yes. Do you have applications that require Windows? Sucks to be you. Sucks to be you. And by the way, those applications can almost always be encapsulated into a VM or something like that if you actually gave a shit. But most IT companies don't do it. Most of the time it's because the desktop support people in IT don't know Linux. That's the bottom line. They don't know it. They got their A+, they know Microsoft and Mac, and they touch Linux maybe twice, and they have no fucking idea how to administer it. And God help them if they're going to have to be responsible for that out there. They can't do it. So the entire enterprise suffers for this. What's a Linux, right? So exactly, what's a Linux? And they have no idea. But I'm telling you, if you're smart enough, if you're a CTO and you're listening to this for some reason, and you're trying to decide what to fix in your organization or to get around this Docker desktop issue, let people that would be using Docker, by the way, if you're using Docker desktop, 9 times out of 10, the people that are using Docker desktop, I would suggest, I don't have evidence for this, I would suggest that 9 out of 10 people who want to use Docker desktop actually know Linux. They probably even know command line Linux enough to be dangerous and enough to use it. And because Docker is fundamentally a command line technology, they're going to be using it anyway, right? They don't need to know Kubernetes, but they need to know Docker. If they are already good enough to need Docker, you don't have that issue at work. You just have different OSs, Mac, Linux, Windows, and others from their supported list. As long as their security wrapper policies are applied, they're okay. Others are vetted. See, Cypheric, that is a company that knows what's up. May I ask what country your company is in? I have a feeling it's not an American company. I'm just going to guess. I'm going to guess. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to guess that company is not American. UK? Okay, right. There you go. I don't know what it is, but there's this idea. If you want to, okay, so I'm going to put this down here. So people who use/know Docker desktop already know Linux. In other words, they would be fine with a Linux workstation. So I know this seems like an unrelated fix for the Docker desktop problem, but I don't think it is. And I've spent, 15 minutes describing why that is. I think if you want to actually fix the Docker desktop issue and you want to make it all go away, you allow anybody who's using Docker desktop to use your standard Linux image with whatever kind of spyware you want to put on there to ensure that the software policies are in place, and you create a Linux image. So rather than going to insane levels of like creating a login server just to do Docker builds, which is what a lot of companies are doing. The companies are like, oh, we're going to make this one server that you can log in on and do Docker builds, and we'll establish all the policies there. And you have to SSH. And by the way, it's only going to be for building. You're not going to be able to do images and your Docker files and all that stuff. You're only going to be able to, they're trying to create these entire customized systems just to build Docker files. When all you really have to do is officially make a Linux image for your enterprise that has Docker on it already. Make an image for your enterprise. Now all your developers have one locally. Okay. Now there's other considerations to this, by the way. So, but again, this is to replace Docker Desktop. I mean, these are people that are already familiar with doing Docker Desktop. If you have a slow VPN, that's a different issue. And we do. We have a VPN that's like crazy ass slow. It takes you like all day to push an image from Docker Desktop up into the cloud, into our private registry. It's ridiculously stupid. That is a separate issue, though. That's a company that wasn't prepared for work from home, that got thrown into work from home, and I won't get into that. That's just poor networking policy across the board. And companies are going to have to fix that as a separate problem, because if you've got shitty bandwidth through your VPN to your home users, the only fix for that is to remotely connect in through SSH or something and do your work inside of the enterprise. But now you've placed a dependency on the internet to get work done to a developer who's normally used to working locally with Docker files and then rebuilding them and stuff. And that's idiotic. So, and by the way, that doesn't get you out of the problem of having to use Docker locally. Because why? Because the developer is not going to write. They're gonna set up their environment locally to do their Docker Desktop builds, right? They're gonna be doing all their Docker Desktop builds and everything, and and then what? They're gonna get a Docker file and they're gonna submit the Docker file, put it over on the build server, and build it over there and bring it over. The whole point is you're like pulling in things locally and stuff like that. It's hairy. The best fix for this, in my opinion, and it is not the intuitive fix. But the best fix for the Docker Desktop problem is let people use Linux. Give them a Linux machine. Give your engineers and your developers and anyone who's using Docker Desktop, which is not a regular user, let them have Linux. They'll be more productive. They'll get more done. They'll be happier. They're more likely to stay in your company. They won't bitch all the time at the water cooler about all the shit that's going wrong with your IT department because you can't even use Linux, even though you have container orchestration for all of its cost advantages within your organization. Companies who try to push the idea that they're all proud of going to Kubernetes because of all the Linux orchestration and containerization it's giving them, and yet don't allow their engineers and developers to use Linux as a workstation are fucking morons. They're morons. There are companies that don't understand what the fuck they're doing. They don't. And they've facilitated all the wrong things. They should have facilitated their best people first. And then they facilitate those people to create applications through cloud native and all the shit that they saw at their CTO conference where they had, overpriced alcohol. So they put Kubernetes in their environment, but it's unsexy to go to one of these big fucking conferences and have them say, you know what you should do? You should give your engineers Linux access. And they're like, what? I paid for this alcohol just for you to tell me that I should give my engineers Linux? I've been saying that for the last 5-10 years. Yeah, you should probably do that. You're not going to pay $500 per Gartner Group report to tell you, let your engineers use Linux. It's not sexy. It's not a buzzword. I mean, that's a passé buzzword, right? But you still haven't done it because your IT department and your CTO is an idiot, because they haven't facilitated the use of the most powerful operating systems for IT technologists and engineers in the world. The most powerful operating system in the world, and you have gatekeeped that thing away from your people. You're an idiot. There. I'm calling it like I see it. And so if you're having a Docker Desktop problem all of a sudden because people in your enterprise have been using Docker Desktop to get around your shitty policies about workstations, then you have a bigger problem. Your problem is you're thinking too shallowly about your people. and you're not allowing your people to have the tools that they need. And if I sound like I'm hot under the collar, I am, because this is idiotic. I will never ever work for a moronic company again that does not allow me to use Linux on my workstation. And WSL is not enough. WSL2 is not enough. The reason that Microsoft is pushing for this so hard is because they see the writing on the wall. Their developers focus is flying out the window, because guess what? Their developers are leaving them in droves for Mac, because why? Mac is built on BSD. It's built on Unix. Underneath, it has been for 2 decades. Meanwhile, Microsoft is like, we don't have anything like that. And now the developers are going over to Mac in droves. They have been. And they're like, okay, come back. We're going to make Linux for you. And now, Docker Desktop's going downhill, and like even Docker Desktop has to be, facilitated or whatever, or accelerated with it. All right. So let me take a breath and move on. But if you really want to enable a good Kubernetes environment, then you need to do the right thing, and you need to enable Linux. You should spend all of that, instead of spending dollars and time trying to and servers that people can log into so they can do Docker builds. What you should do instead is spend all of that time and energy on enabling your engineers to have Linux, because they will be happier and they won't have to log in, and they'll be productive even if you have a shitty VPN, because they can do all of their development locally. They can do all their development and all their tweaking on their things and everything locally, and they don't have to be dependent on a stable connection over your shitty VPN to some terminal application, while everybody else sits there and is waiting to watch you because you can't even keystroke and you're shared over. This has happened so many times. The shitty VPN connection, and we're all looking at it over Slack, and everybody's trying to do shit on the remote system. I mean, the 1990s called and they want their Unix workflows back. Nobody does that. You should be doing all of that locally. Anyway, all right. Next topic. So we're gonna go through. I started when we did the last session. We were trying to talk about. We're talking about the difference of Helm, trying to get Helm policies to apply, and so I'm actually going to do some of that right now. I'm going to do that right now. So we're going to go ahead and do, I just want to see which profiles. Okay. MK get pods. We're going to, oh wait. So again, I got a crash boot live. That's right, because we messed with the image. Yeah, I messed with the image on that one. We were playing around with the Elasticsearch images. So we might have to come back and play with that. We were looking at Helm Chart application and policy applications to the Helm Chart. So I actually don't need this right now, so I can go ahead and stop this. I think. Do I need kubectl? No, I don't. In fact, I don't want to have kubectl anywhere. Okay, so this is the new goal. So the goal for the next, we can put a bookmark in this now, but the goal for this this next segment is to get check a Helm a Helm deployment against OPA Gatekeeper policy before applying it. So we want to check a Helm Gatekeeper policy. Did I say 2022? I'm thinking in advance. Thanks, Porsche. Thank you so much for that. I didn't want to send that out. I don't claim to be accurate all the time. Very live here. All right, so check a Helm deployment. So this is the goal now. And I believe the steps are, one, install a Helm chart. You got to, there's a number of steps here that'll be a good review. Install a Helm chart. I mean, you have to get the repo and all that jazz. And then number two, output the Helm chart resources. In other words, resource YAML. All right. And three, we want to do apply Gatekeeper. I'm putting a capital here because that's the name of it. Gatekeeper policy checks. And we'll talk about what Gatekeeper is when we get there. I don't want to dive too deeply into that because reasons. But it's the standard way to do it. It's not just a Kubernetes thing, by the way. And it has its own language, Rego, and everything. So we have to add another language to the list. Oh, great, right? And okay, so the first thing we need to do is get a Helm chart. By the way, notice that none of this involves, none of this requires a Kubernetes cluster. Nope, none of it requires a Kubernetes cluster. The final stage of applying it does. So we're playing around with stuff that should be able to be done from your computer, your local computer with Linux or Helm, or I don't even know if that requires. I think anybody using Helm on a Mac, I imagine some people are. I think everything that we're doing right now does not require Linux, but obviously I would suggest you use that instead. So first things first, we need to get a Helm chart installed. And I have to kind of remind myself how to get a Helm chart installed. So I want to go see my Helm repos, Helm repo list, I think it is, right? Yeah, so I have a Jupyter Hub Helm chart, and I have an Elasticsearch Helm chart. Now, to get this, we're not going to cover this today. It's like Helm repo add, I think it is, right? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, people. Again, this is live co-learning. This is not, I don't pretend to be an expert. So, you have to give it a name. It's Elastic. And by the way, if you script this stuff up, you have to make sure everybody uses the same name. Another reason, this can be a problem. So it already exists. Okay, and then once you add it, let's add one that doesn't exist. What's the other Helm chart? I'm gonna go node feature discovery. Helm chart. I want to do a new one just for the sake of practice. Node feature discovery. Here we go. NFD. Not to be confused with, you know what I'm gonna say. All right, so I'm trying to find the Helm chart. Nope, that's not what we're doing. Where's the Helm chart? Operator hub. Okay. Oh my God. There's an operator hub now. When did this start? Shit, this is going to replace Helm, man. Oh my God. It's the preferred way. Oh, God damn it. Now we have to know that. Taniwa, are you out there? Mr. Sick Man? Poor guy. He went to the forest, came back sick. Poor dude. He was talking about it the other day. I feel bad for him. I probably shouldn't talk about that on the stream. Anyway, so what I'm asking you is because this here is like the node feature discovery. Okay, so node feature discovery is an official part of the Kubernetes project. And for an internal Kubernetes project to throw Helm out the window and use Operator Hub instead is significant. What the hell is OLM? I'm learning something new here. What the hell is OLM and Operator Hub? I know about Artifact Hub. Artifact Hub is the Helm version. This is why I'm super interested, because this might be a Helm replacement. I don't know if this is the one from I think this might be the one. Operator Lifecycle Manager. What the hell is this? I got to find out about this. Oh my God. There's no way they're going to put this in operations at our place, but because if we can replace Helm at the same time, it's hard. It's hard to be in the decision-making process right now because there's kind of a transition going away from Helm. Kind Provisioner, Operator Lifecycle Manager. What the hell is that? See, Operator Lifecycle Manager. It is the operator framework. So this is the Red Hat thing. Yep. Here, I'll show you. This is the Red Hat thing. I'm almost positive. Yeah, it is. It definitely is. Uh-huh. Oh my God. It's got legs. It has legs, people. Oh my God. It definitely has legs. I was afraid of this. Let me show you what this is. God damn it. I'm really glad I ran into this though, because if you're talking about, okay, once again, don't build a custom tool. If you build a custom tool and you wrap up Helm, and then Helm stops being the standard installation method, what are you going to do? There's no Ghostbusters to call. And yet, if you've been doing each application, like, by the way, if you don't do a monolith, if you do a monolith and you do it all around one tool, every single thing in your monolith has to be Helm. Unix philosophy, do one thing well. Oh my God, I'm so glad we're thinking about this right now. Because if we break down all those systems infrastructure applications in Kubernetes, if we break them down into individual Git repos, they can be incrementally updated one at a time. So you can take one and say, okay, this one makes sense to leave on Helm. There's no operator. We can say this next one, okay, this one. So for example, the feature, look, okay, I so many things have just become clear. I have to really delineate these things. So I just installed Node Feature Discovery using the Helm chart. All right. And if you go to the Node Feature Discovery page now, guess what the official way of installing it is? They're done with the Helm chart. They gave it up. So because I used the standard tool that we have that requires Helm, what do? The official way the whole reason for using these things is to be able to use the official way of installing it. It's like having to pick between Pacman and RPM and apt sort of all at the same time. You have to have, if you did an application that encapsulated all of that, you'd be even more fucked, because now you have to like switch between the two depending on what the distributor of the thing decides to do it. So the reason that I'm going to make the case again, the reason that each of your system's applications should be considered independently from everything else other than applying policies is so that they can have a different upgrade path. So that if, in my case, I'm really glad I looked at this as an example, because I just realized that my entire installation process is now deprecated because they're no longer using it. So I have to update that. And that's what my job is, right? But I would never have even fucking found this if I hadn't looked at it. Watch, they're going to say, or you can use the old way, the Helm chart. You watch. Welcome to Node Feature Discovery. All right, so get all primary examples why books, articles outdate so nicely. Yeah. So they're really a super duper quick start is you can just pull down, you can just run it. You can just run the YAML file. And if you just run the YAML file like this, again, I'm going to make the case again for scripting. So imagine this. I am trying to decide how to deploy Node Feature Discovery. If I don't have a big crusty ass tool that has to be maintained that requires Helm, I can now make a GitHub repo just for Node Feature Discovery that has one script in it. It has install, it has rollback. I don't even need Helm. I can write my own versions, and I just go over here and I put this line in my little script and I'm done. I'm completely done. I can maybe make some alterations with some variables for prod, but I'm done. I don't need Helm. I don't need all the overhead of Helm and all that other stuff. So this is a quick start, right? So, yeah. I mean, this is the way to do it. Yeah. So feature discovery, this is telling you all the stuff about it. It doesn't even say how to reduce Jekyll. This is very common to do this, by the way. So this is just all GitHub server pages. That's what's up. So if you go back to getting started, installation, nothing says how to do the installation. It's like, dude, they completely removed the Helm chart. They don't even refer to the Helm chart anymore. They used to refer to the Helm chart. They don't even refer to it anymore. Did they delete it? Oh my God. Node annotations. Oh yeah, it's annotations. It's not labels. I forgot. I said labels earlier. That was wrong. So quick start. Deploy with Kustomize. Creates a namespace requiring blah, blah, blah. Kubernetes apply. And require RBAC rules to deploy as blah, blah, blah. So we had somebody earlier saying that to use Kustomize for everything. And this would be one of the ways of doing that. Wait until NFD master and worker are running. Use node labels, and then you can do your affinity and everything. So, where is Helm? Section that tells you you're stupid for asking where Helm is. Dude, I'm confused now because the official install for this was Helm until now. Oh, look at this. Deployment options. They're calling it deployment options now. There it is. Operator. Look at Helm got built and pushed down. Helm got pushed down 2 levels. Shit. So node feature discovery. They know what's up, man. They know what's up, people. They said, you know what? We're going to give you the options because this is a very fluid space. This whole install shit into Kubernetes is a very fluid space right now, and we're going to let you pick. And that leaves you in all kinds of hurt because you have to pick away. And we like quadrupled down on Helm installs. And obviously it's not the best way to do that. Could apply to any cluster. This is why we use Helm. So we have all of our functions readily available. We don't allow anybody to run kubectl apply. See, Porsche, you are in the same mindset as the people who made the tool that we use. So you have a tool on top of that uses kubectl apply, right? You have, you only allow Helm. I see. So it has to pass through the Helm. Helm is your sort of like IT way to get stuff in, right? If you're not using Helm, you're screwed. But I mean, then what happens when somebody doesn't release a product in Helm? You have to depend on the industry to make. What happens if somebody releases something that doesn't even use Helm anymore? See, this is the problem. The problem is that there is no standard here, and if we were all using a Debian operating system, we could say, okay, is there a package for that? Do we have a DPKG or whatever? And it'd be good to go. But because the method of installing stuff is so fluid, like locking down policies about how you put stuff in your cluster is really problematic right now. It really is, because I just deployed this as a Helm chart, just barely, and there was no operator option at the time. And deploy with Kustomize. The Kustomize overlays provide in the repo can be used directly. So, yeah. So these Kustomize overlays, they're just a bunch of YAML files. That's all they really are. This will create RBAC rules and deploy NFD masters, deployment, the daemon set, and no feature space. Alternatively, you can clone the repo, customize the deployment by creating your own overlays. See, this is I think is better than Helm, because in Helm you have to, an extra thing. You have to support the template on top of that. Helm supports more complex installation possibilities because it lets you set an infinite number of different configurations, but inevitably you have to go in there and tweak the template or fuck with the thing anyway. So the Kustomize approach says, okay, we're going to give you the base and then you change it to your heart's content. And I happen to be a fan of that. Because then you're in control of what version you have, and you're doing your own variations on it. The problem is that if you do it that way, and the people deploying it, so for example, Jupyter Hub, there is no Kustomize for Jupyter Hub. Jupyter Hub is lucky to have a Helm chart, and it's not a particularly good Helm chart, but it's a Helm chart, right? It's an extremely complex application with multiple moving parts, spawns and user namespaces and a whole bunch of stuff like that, where the Helm chart takes care a lot of that for you. However, the Helm chart also makes a bunch of really dumbass assumptions, such as everybody wants a pre-polar daemon set. And if you've got 1,000 nodes and you deploy that into production, that means every single one of them is going to run the daemon set and it's going to pre-pull all the stuff for the thing. You would never deploy that. So we had to disable that thing in the Helm chart. If we had started with the standard thing in the first place and looked through it and made the customization stuff, we had to make so many changes to the official Helm chart at that point. We were barely on the side where the Helm chart was still better than not. And there was huge debate on the team about whether we should keep the 1.0 Helm chart for Jupyter Hub, or we should just throw it all away and generate the YAML files from it and support those YAML files ourselves and fork the whole fucking project. So this is a really, really confusing space in the Kubernetes landscape right now. This is really confusing because they haven't got anything defined. So, this I want to look at their Helm chart. So they have, but see, here's what's really interesting is they now list the number one way to do this is use the relatively new. See, look, deployment using the node feature is recommended to be done via Operator Hub. So they want you to use that. Yep. They don't want you to use Helm. Node feature discovery, Helm repo add. This is exactly what I did. Add the charts, do the update, and install with the NFT, create namespace, generate name. Yeah, we wrote a tool to take in COTS Helm charts or custom charts we create for in-house apps. This lets us manage them in the same way. Sounds like you have created the exact same, in the same spirit as ours. We've created an app that does the same thing. We've created an app that encapsulates the Helm chart and tests it with gatekeeper policies and then does its deployment, right, in our way. And we can change one variable and it will deploy to production versus dev. So this is, I said there's like 3 ways that companies are dealing with this. And one of them is the, all controlling, thou shalt put it into our system. But unfortunately, you can't just put a Helm chart into our system. You have to put a Helm chart and then you have to do a number of overlay configurations on top of that get applied to the values before they even go into. So we have our own overlay system, which is not corporate. That's not a corporate secret. We have our own overlay system that gets applied before it ever even touches Helm. And then when it gets to Helm, it does its thing, right? Unless it doesn't. So for example, we just found a bug recently that doesn't recognize the different context and depends on your current context being set locally when you run the script. That's a huge bug. And they just found that. So we're trying to decide about whether to fix that or not, and or whether to just get rid of it and let people just run Helm default. But at least the systems people, right? Now here's the thing: if you have a whole group of people that are out there who are just, they don't know much Kubernetes or anything, they're not going to know Helm. So you have an entire kind of category of developers and engineers who have minimal Kubernetes experience. Frankly speaking, they should have CCAD experience. And this is probably why they added Helm to the CCAD knowledge. Because if you're going to deploy a Kubernetes application, you need to know Helm today. I mean, at least you did until whatever's going on now. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to change it and make the operator thing the new standard in this certification? Where are they going to go with this? This is one of the reasons with certification is kind of bullshit. Because the certification in this particular case is opinionated about how people are going to be doing deployments. It doesn't even include the operator framework, which is, according to the node feature discovery, which is probably one of the hottest projects within Kubernetes. It's a special interest group within Kubernetes. They don't even use it anymore. They support this legacy Helm thing, and they're like, yeah, hey, Helm chart allow easy deployment and manage through NFT. So if you're going to do that, and then, but think about the people who are trying to maintain this. Now they're trying to maintain the operator framework and the Helm thing and the Kustomize option. So they got all these different things to maintain. It's like, I mean, that's not unusual though. I mean, people that distribute software are regularly having to support multiple package installations. I mean, if you're making software, you have to support ARM and AUR and Pacman and RPM and I remember it was bad enough just writing RPM packages. I used to do that for IBM, and let alone making a makefile ahead of that to just build a tarball so it can be installed as a tarball. In fact, that's how I did my RPM stuff. Is I would add makefiles that would build a tarball that they could just install and would run it on, do all the right things, and run the build script. And then the RPM encapsulation of that package just took the tarball and did that very thing. So if I wanted to package it using another package manager, I could do the same thing. So I think I'm talking myself through the malaise of of supporting an application in multiple package types for Kubernetes, packaging types. So here we have three. We have Kustomize, we have Helm, and we have Operator. This is actually really instructive because this shows you what a kick-ass, in-the-know project that's an application development team thinks you should do to properly deploy. So I'm gonna actually put this in my notes because I want people to see that this is a thing. So yeah, I'll put related. As I said, a lot of times the best ways to learn is to find a good project or coder or person, and then just kind of mirror what they do or follow what they do. It's how I learned Go from TJ and a bunch of others. It's a really good practice, right? So if you can find a couple really good projects, another one is Kind. By the way, a project that's absolutely stupid and makes regular dumbass decision is the Helm project. The Helm project regularly makes really basic dumbass architectural design decisions. Great people, probably shitty design decisions, unnecessary make files. So the entire project is cursed. I hope that they can do better, but I think that the better minds are going elsewhere, and it would appear that that's what's happening in the brains of, I don't know, but that's what's happening in the brains of people creating something as awesome as known feature discovery. These people are like totally on top of how to deploy applications. They're part of the special interest group for Kubernetes. I mean, if anybody knows how to deploy an application, they do. And their number one listed way of doing it is using the new operator framework, which is just an incubated state in the landscape, by the way. I'm going to show you that in a second. So, following NFD project says a lot about preferred, I guess, package install, and install methods. And to me, so it looks like operator framework is overtaking Helm in popularity. Also, Kustomize is holding on as well for smaller deployments, and I feel like that's going to stay too. Yeah, what are you saying? The U is very subjective. I think they do this for small startup orgs. No way I can do this in my huge org. Well, and that's why we're asking about it. But I don't know what Helm buys you. Knowing to how many things I can't do because my infra is air gapped. All the tools assume I can just connect to anything on the interwebs. Oh, like Kustomize? Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, because with Helm you can download the chart. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Operator framework, though, I think is not that way, right? That is a seriously good point, Portia. That is really a good point. We really need to apply our scrutiny with that in mind. Does my enterprise require air gap separation from package providers? I hate calling them packages, but that's the closest thing. So, I mean, this is a big consideration. I'm really glad you mentioned that, because the thing about Helm that is really rock solid is you download a tarball that has all of your stuff in it. And in our case, we put it inside of our tool. And then the tarball, our local copy of the tarball is then installed using Helm locally. And we don't need to use the repo add or any of that shit. I imagine, Ports, you don't use any Helm repo add, do you? Or do you add it, or do you have local copies of the repos? Do you just get? I mean, I've been really curious. I mean, images is one thing, right? You have all your images in a private repo, which is already a process, right? So the way that a Helm chart, the way that software that's installed with a Helm chart, you proxy everything. Okay, I was going to say, yeah. So that's actually a really good idea. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, proxy everything through Artifactory. Is that related to Artifact.io directly? I haven't heard of it. I mean, but that approach to proxying things, it's interesting too, because that is the same architectural design that Go uses to ensure that imported modules are secure, which is in the news right now because NPM did not do that, and now React and Angular and everything have been compromised because they don't have a solid design to ensure that their pedigree of dependencies is all clean. So if you're like it's from JFrog, artifact repo that supports Helm Docker. Oh right, we're a Harbor shop for that. We're probably gonna use Harbor for that. I mean, that's not architectural secret. I don't know. I mean, there's only so many of them, right? I mean, we got old Portis out there and stuff. So, but the question I have is, so that's just where you're putting your images in the chart. Obviously, you're just bringing the chart in, right? So this is the thing people might not understand. So I probably need to explain it. So, when you're doing, when you're doing anything with installation, there's a number of places you have to get the software, right? You have the images that are involved, and there's usually multiple images. And then you have the actual packaged up configuration files. And in the case of Helm, that's a Helm chart. So the Helm chart has got the templates and all the default values and everything. There's lots and lots of stuff in there. But it's mostly just a big tarball of configs, bottom line. But then that chart has a dependency on a number of images. And by default, the Helm charts are usually pulling images from the internet. They're pulling them from Docker, they're pulling them from wherever. And depending on how many images there are, you have a considerable amount of chart configuration to change. And here's something interesting. Some of those Helm charts don't let you, I mean, the stupid ass Helm charts that are out there, and they're out there, I promise, they don't let you say, I want to pull this image from an internal image repo. So they're set to, in a very unqualified way, to pull the images from Docker only. With some vendors' values that doesn't even support changing where they pull the image from. Exactly. That's what I try to tell you. So Porsche has felt this pain before. So this is one of the reasons that people hate Helm. They hate Helm because people don't know how to make a fucking Helm chart. So they'll make a Helm chart that does not take into consideration the needs of the enterprise, that cannot bring any software into their local internal. If you go out and grab an image off the internet and you stick that in our private registry, you're taking responsibility for deploying that software into our entire enterprise. That's a big fucking deal to legal. I don't care how small your company is. If you don't have a process for vetting images that are being installed into your Kubernetes cluster, you're going to get burned bad. And if you don't believe me, just go read the news today. The news today is all about software that people didn't do the pedigree, and they didn't research the pedigree and where stuff was coming from, and it's not being checked on because NPM is a fucking disaster, and it's just yet another upstream security flaw, yet another one. There's like one every month now in NPM. Do you want that for your enterprise of Kubernetes using images? And yeah, 3 different products to scan images in repo and runtime in Kubernetes clusters. Yeah. You see, I like what you're saying. Thank you so much for sharing, because you're working for a company that actually gives a shit about security. I don't know what your company is. It might be a government or something. You don't have to say, please. But the point of the matter is, of course, you're sharing stuff that I'm trying to convey here, and because it's real. When you're working for a large enterprise, you can't even bring anything through the door without getting approval by legal. And whether it's a library that you're using or a Fortune 500 investment bank, yeah, there you go. Somebody who actually cares and has the money to pay for it. Yeah, and so setting up automated, automated interrogation of the images and stuff to make sure you're not bringing anything insecure into your enterprise is like really fucking important. You got to gatekeep that shit. You have to gatekeep everything that comes into your enterprise because that's the vector the hackers are going to look for. Bring anything to the table the upper suits are trying to push, right? Well, I think you can. I mean, it is true. It is true that big investment banks like that have other concerns about the software and stuff that's being deployed. But it is also true that the enterprises of that size tend to like umbrella their concern. They will like shadow their own agenda behind security. Happens a lot too. So it's hard to say. The Orange Ride, how's it going? Have you ever automated integration tests in Kubernetes via CI/CD? No, we don't have any intention to do that. That's not the kind of thing I would ever do. People are doing it though. People are doing it. Yeah. People are doing that with Kind actually. They're using Kind inside the cluster to do CI/CD stuff for Kubernetes deployments. You might want to look into that. Rest of the yeah. Helm Chart, and then use some sort of callback to a remote endpoint for test outputs such as Travis CI, or should I use Kubernetes plugin for Jenkins? Restructure the YAML. This stuff is, but I don't do any of that. So we don't have any CI/CD in my pipeline because I'm kind of an administrator. But if you did, there's probably some people out there. I know there's people here who know. By the way, I think we have a Kubernetes channel on the Discord. So go to my about and click on the Discord. You can go ask in there too. We can try to find some people for you to help you out with that. Normal news sites. There was some security thing with Agile React today. I haven't read the news yet. Everybody was just asking me about it today in the chat. So I haven't even read it yet. I should probably read it. It'll be in the news on Wednesday. Yeah, I'll make sure it gets in the news for Wednesday. I should probably put it in the news right now. Is that edit news? Yep. NPM React and security flaw. Let me just save that one real quick. All right, so it's the second time you've heard Kind called out for that. Yeah, Kind is Kind. So just give me a nutshell. Kind is actually. Oh, you found Louis Corsfilicenti. Of course, Louis would find it. Louis needs to be on salary. I swear. He finds the links to things like within seconds. He's our AI. I swear he's our fucking AI. I'm so happy he's in our community. Dude, we just roughly mentioned a thing and Louis had the link with a full title right within like 20 seconds. I love this community. I just cannot overstate it. You guys are the best. I mean, I cannot... Lucenti research makes my research skills like look like a kindergartner. He's so fucking fast. It blows my mind. So there you go. There's your NPM link. It's in the current news. If you want to go to my hub, it's in there, or you can be in the chat. You can read it. So wow. Okay. So Kind was built specifically to test Kubernetes itself by emulating a Kubernetes cluster inside of Docker with containers as nodes and stuff like that. So because of that, and because it's used for testing, it fits well into the whole CI/CD pipeline thing because it is Docker. So you can put Kind into a pod or something like that. And I don't know how they do it. I haven't looked at it, but that's what they're doing. And there's a lot of people doing that. There's been talk about making MiniCube do that as well now that MiniCube does Docker by default, but that's a VM. And then there's another thing called KubeVirt, which is a virtual machine that runs inside of Kubernetes. And I haven't played with that at all. I kind of feel like it's kind of too weird for me. I don't know if I'm ready for it, but a lot of people use it. A lot of people use KubeVirt for different things too. So that's another one to look at. But so we're going to return back to this NFD project and to the operator hub and to methods of installation. So proxy, I think it's good practice to interrogate and scan any images added. Bad Helm charts inevitably do not allow changes to image source. And this is a huge problem because how do you fix that? And I'm sure Portia will yell about this, but if you can't change your Helm chart image source, what is your option? The only option at that point is to fork the chart and customize your own chart. And you've just defeated the entire, value proposition of Helm charts in the first place. So if somebody writes a shitty chart and they don't allow you to change your image source, which is a basic thing, or they don't allow you to set resource constraints, which is another one they always miss, and they don't allow you to set run as root as to know, if they forget those things because they're inexperienced and they don't know how to make a Helm chart, your only option is to fork the Helm chart or say, we're not using the Helm chart. But if you're a company that's using Helm as your gatekeeper for everything, you got to have a good Helm chart. Now you're fucked because they don't even provide it. So what is your only option at that point is to manage your own Helm chart that is a fork of the other one. So now you're maintaining forks of standard Helm charts in your own source repository internal that is completely divergent from the path. So when they make a release of a new Helm chart, you have to study if you're going to consider upgrading, which you need to do as part of your job, then you have to go through, you can open an issue on the Helm chart, but the chances are they won't change it, by the way. So you go through the Helm chart, you look at the whole thing and you decide what needs to change here and everything. And then you put it in, but now you've got, just think about, the layers of indirection that are going on there to maintain a piece of software. And by the way, the problem is compounded by the number of applications. Just in our systems infrastructure, we have 20 something applications. So if you're trying to manage hundreds of different applications coming from users with all sorts of different degrees of RBAC access to different things, you have to have some sort of gatekeeping policy on how stuff makes it into your cluster. And if you don't, you're going to get burned bad. You're going to get burned really badly. Or pull the images locally, upload to Kubernetes or set policy to if not present. Don't ask how. I know this. Yeah, I know. You can do that, but if you do that, then you've changed. You've installed. But it's like technically, okay. So what you're describing, Portia, is totally legit, and people do it all the time. But what you're doing is you're modifying the state of the thing so it doesn't match what's been installed. And if that's not auditable, I'm not talking about security. I'm talking about first we're going through a big SLA thing. We want to have like reproducibility. Like what happens? I'm doing an audit of our production applications, and it's like the big point of this is to be able to not only communicate what's running in our environment, but how do I recreate it if we get screwed? So like if we get screwed, what do we do? Right. And we have backups of etcd and all that kind of thing, or we do kubackup and dump all the YAML files in their current state, right? But we don't the installation charts. If we were to go back to the installation charts and we forgot all the little tweaks we do to get it to run, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, exactly. Yep, I know. And the problem too is that then people will, you get pressure from up top, the regular pressure to make it work, right? And so now you're like making changes to the live environment that aren't represented anywhere, and now you're really fucked. Because if anything changes, if you don't know all the changes you made. So my recommendation, if you're gonna have to do that kind of thing, is either to do it up front and maintain your changes to the chart, which is exactly what we have, or to frankly, I think the best solution to this is to add a layer to whatever you do that fits after the Helm chart. So you have the Helm chart, and then you have stuff you want to apply that Helm didn't consider or you want to change. Internal PHP. Oh yeah. So you have everything that comes out of the Helm chart, right? The problem with this is you can no longer use Helm to do it. You have to use something like Helm template, dump out all the files, change the files the way you need to be compliant with OPA Gatekeeper policy, and then apply those files. But if you don't allow the user to apply it, you need to put all of that into a tool that you customize. And it's solid 2 days till it starts. Yeah, I know these are strange problems, and they're not going away. I don't see an easy answer for this. I am intrigued by Operator Hub. So one of the things I want to know about Operator Hub before we leave this for today, and I'm about done here for today, is we really need to find out what the Operator Hub, if it requires access to an external resource, or if the chart and the images can be brought internally, and then it can be deployed internally. I have a feeling no. I mean, based on this, cube control, create, go for the operator, install the operator, right? You'll need to have the OLM installed, and then after that, you have to go get the operator. Now, you obviously don't have to pull this down. I still hear Portia. Portia, would this pass your policies? Probably not, right? With something like this pass, you said you can't do any cube control apply, right? So, yeah, you wouldn't be able to do this because the YAML file is coming down direct, right? So that wouldn't pass. Kustomize wouldn't pass. So in this case, this is why there's so much enterprise clout and momentum behind Helm, because the enterprise loves it. I mean, it's got problems, but at least puts the control. The other thing too is the entire reason to use the vendor solution when doing Go coding. You know what that is? So when you're doing Go coding and you have a dependency on a vendor tool, and you're just terrified that the vendor is going to go away, you're no longer going to be able to pull down this stuff because it's not going to be there anymore. Go, and by the way, this is one of the things that's so amazing about Go. I can't speak about any other language at this point, but Go is fucking amazing at this, because you create a vendor directory and you can pull down module dependencies while you're doing your code that will permanently become a part of your project. So basically what it does is it freezes a vendor version into your source code at that point, exactly as it is. And that way you don't give a shit what happens to the vendor after that. You really don't. You don't give a shit. If you want to by hand update that vendor, you can go do that. Now, if you want a more dynamic, pulling from the latest repos and stuff like that, or locking down the versions and then just updating the versions and all the more fluid, flexible ways of doing it, you can stick with the regular module approach. But when you really want to lock in a vendor, like you want to say, I know that this version of this vendor software works, and I never, ever, ever, ever want my upstream to be corrupted like NPM today, then you can say, I want all of these vendors to be, I've vetted this source code. It's past my engineering team. It's past my legal team. This vendor software is now a part of my software, and with all the appropriate licenses and everything like that. But now it's permanently stored in your source tree at that place, and you never, ever have to do anything with it. And I really love that, because to me, that is the equivalent architectural principle. IT architect. In other words, I'm managing the security of my enterprise, and I happen to be a Fortune 500 investment banker, right? Bank company. Okay. If I'm managing the exact same architectural principle applies to Helm, whether you love it or hate it, that same architectural principle applies to Helm, because I can take that Helm vendor chart, and I can basically vendorize it by adding it to my system. And then whatever system I do for Helm installs, I don't ever pull them from the internet. I pull them from my, cached, vetted, slightly modified if necessary, hard copy of the Helm chart at that moment in history. It's the same IT principle behind the vendor directory in Go development. It's exactly the same principle. You have frozen a thing at a moment in time that now becomes a part of your infrastructure. And so then when you go back to revisit it, you just know that you're going to have to say, well, gosh, we froze this on X and Y date. It's in this GitHub repo at this level. How much has changed since then? And when you go through to do a change, you're going to have to literally vet every single change. And those changes may or may not be available through a Git fork, which is actually one of the downsides of Helm, unfortunately. Helm charts are tarballs. So unless you're creating your own GitHub repo that has the tarball at your own level, then you're not going to be able to see the difference. Now, Helm they're supposed to be anyway, they're supposed to change the versions as they go, but each one is just a tarball. So it's not like you can go to the Git repo and say, show me everything that's changed between these two versions. And it just so happens that most Helm charts are also, you know, tagged or released versions of a GitHub repo someplace. So if you want to go track every change from here to there, you could do it in their Git repo if they provide it, but it's not required by Helm. Helm only requires you to have a tarball on a website. That's it. That's it. And it doesn't even have to be, you know, like the best practice everyone's been using. It doesn't have to be a GitHub Pages one that goes along with the source code like so many projects do. It doesn't have to be that, right? It can be anything. So a part of the specification for Helm was not necessarily a dependence on Git. And I think that might have been a failure, actually. I wish they hadn't done that. I think that would have been, just imagine Helm if they had actually built a hard Git dependency in it. If they had treated Helm like Go itself, and if they had built a hard dependency for the charts on a GitHub repo, then you could actually do Helm pull and all that stuff. You could use Git repos for that. And then you could literally just fork or clone a Git repo, put it into your environment, and boom, there's your Helm chart. And the versions would match and everything. All the history would match. You'd be able to evaluate all the things that had changed. I feel like they really missed the boat on that. By making it into a tarball, they were trying to solve the air gap systems with the tar thing. Yeah, because a fork is not as air gapped, Taniwa. Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, I see that. Because the tarball literally has to be downloaded, right? They have to be put it there. And if they just pointed to Git repo, it'd be like, you know. So I can see why they did it. And honestly, this whole conversation, we're kind of wrapping up the conversation today, but I've gained a newfound appreciation for Helm, based on particularly Porsche's insights and to my reflection on some of the potential reasons behind the design decisions of Helm versus the operators and Kustomize. And yeah, as Porsche has said, and others have said, it's more about scale. It's like, do you have an air gap requirement because you're working for the government or investment bank? If you do, Helm is your only option. I mean, you can try to build options with Kustomize where you take the files and you vet them and you put them in your own system. I mean, I suppose you could do that, but does that qualify as air gapped? I mean, I don't know. So yeah, I have a new appreciation for Helm's concerns for air gapped requirements. Which is a lot of enterprise. I mean, enterprise is going to be doing this. Git repo can be a tarball. Yeah. Well, ultimately, so this is where this is going. I think what I want to do with this is, we're considering breaking out our charts, and just using Helm directly. And I think what this is going to mean is that for each Helm application, we have a GitHub repo, and we follow some sort of convention with regard to that. And I don't know of any existing industry conventions there. Right. Yeah, they're air gapped, but they really don't. Yeah, they're not. Get by default and tarball as a backup. I would too. Yeah. So let's think about that for a second. So one of the systems that I'm trying to find a best practice here. I think, what are people putting in their Git repos? You know, assuming you're even able to do your own Kubernetes. What I want to know, of course, you know, we don't have time to talk about it today. If you come back, what I really want to know is, do you or anyone like you, do you do any OPA Gatekeeper? I mean, if you're scanning your images, I imagine you have some sort of gatekeeper checks, and we haven't gotten to that part yet. You know, we haven't talked about gatekeeper checks. I don't see how you could do it without it. I mean, unless you wrote a tool, which is like the tool we have, where it doesn't run Helm. It runs a form of Helm that shows you all the files you're going to end up with. And then it takes those files and runs those through OPA Gatekeeper checks for policy compliance. And then it chokes if it doesn't pass, and it won't deploy it. If it's fine, then it will go ahead and do the Helm apply. It's too complex. It needs a simpler path to operate. I agree. So really, what I'm kind of after here, and it sounds like this is going to be a topic for tonight. I think I'm going to revisit this topic tonight at 7, no matter what. I don't know if anybody's going to be around tonight for Friday night who wants to talk about OPA Gatekeeper policies. Probably will only last 90 minutes. In fact, I'm going to change these time frames to be. I'm not going to have any more than a 90-minute session from now on because it like wears me out. It totally wears me out. You should stream. I'm going to do OPA tonight. So that's what this was supposed to be. We were supposed to get through the Helm stuff so that I could create a system that does some OPA Gatekeeper, Rego applications and uses some of the tools that are out there. And we look at some of the, there's a couple of default registries out there that have policies in place for Kubernetes. There's a whole bunch of that stuff already, right? And I happen to have discovered that because of the tool that we use. The author of the tool was really, really well informed about all the policies that are out there to apply, not just RAM constraints, CPU constraints, run as root, that kind of thing. So the policy constraints. But what I'm not aware of is an industry best practice for applying OPA Gatekeeper policies. First of all, what are the policies for an enterprise level Kubernetes deployment? RAM constraints obviously are one of them. And then, but how do you apply them? Do you apply them after the fact, after you've already deployed? And you go back and look at your system and say, hey, you're out of compliance. Now, if you're using Gatekeeper, that stuff won't even run. So, yeah. I check workload identity is lifted from its 1.3 transport and feed them to OPA. Yeah. Hey, how's it going there, Dev? Welcome, everybody. I'm getting ready to go do a live stream. I'm going to go on a run here pretty soon. You can come with me if you want. I don't have my port forwarding set up yet, so I'm going to be doing it from my phone. So I will be dropping the stream right temporarily here, and then I'll be streaming from my GoPro for the next hour or so when I go run. You can hear me like breathe and pant. Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, I got people coming at me at work too. So, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody, Portia in particular today. Thank you so much for participating. I cannot overemphasize my gratitude to you and to your participation. To the YouTubers out there, if you don't know who I'm talking about, come on and join our community and you'll get to know everybody. I don't want to dox anybody, but for somebody with such a significant role to share some of their internal processes about Kubernetes is fucking amazing, frankly. And it gives me great satisfaction to know that this community is growing into that. We have another person who's very significant in the Kubernetes world right now. I won't say how significant because it would be too much doxing. Who's also here chiming in on these things. So this is about the community, and particularly, we're answering questions that don't have answers right now, and I love it. I love it because it's helping me not only become a better prepared for certification, but better prepared to give architectural advice to CTOs and people like that. As they're setting up their systems, why would you not use the operator framework? Do you have a requirement for air gap? There's almost like a flow path you could ask somebody if you were going to do some consulting for an organization as to their process. Do you even need Kubernetes at all? Maybe you're a Nomad comp person, and this is the kind of thinking that I really enjoy because it's kind of that consultant thinking about how can you best help a company benefit from all of this without too much extra stuff, right? And right now I'm kind of exploring the possibility that we have too much stuff and what would the alternative look like. And the next thing we'll talk about tonight at 7 will be OPA Gatekeeper policy. I promise we're going to start on OPA Gatekeeper policy, and we will be continuing the conversation about, well, what do you do so we have to ask the question. So like in Portia's organization, you can't even run, I do. Well, I don't want you to give away too much of your stuff. We'll come back, and I feel guilty asking people about their internal processes. So yeah. I got to answer some chat here too, so it's going to be a while. I'm going to go ahead and put the music on for a while, and then the music will drop. Sharing is caring. I was saying that earlier. You probably heard me say it. Because this is. This is going to keep us safer too. Yeah, it is going to keep us safer. it's going to keep all of us safer. You know, but the question I was going to ask you point blank is, how do you check OPA Gatekeeper policy if you have users running Helm directly? If users are running Helm directly to do installs, there's no, they better be doing OPA Gatekeeper policy on dry runs of Helm templates before. And I don't even know how to do that yet. I know how our tool does it, but I want to talk about that. I want to explore that whole space tonight and tomorrow. I want to get my head around how can we kind of do that. Yeah, well, and this is a co-learning stream. So to the beginners out there who are totally like their head is swimming, we don't know what's going on. We're talking about, like high level enterprise architectural concerns regarding Kubernetes and cloud native. These are things that made my head swim not more than 6 months ago. So the conversation is continuing as my knowledge improves, and we have other people help me out here. There are playlists of this kind of stuff coming forward, so you can go to YouTube if you want to start from square one and kind of join me for the ride while I kind of learn it all and discuss it. But I did a video on the minimum requirements to start in Kubernetes. Please go look for that on YouTube. Don't even attempt that until you've covered everything there, which is coincidentally most of the stuff I've covered in the beginner boost for 2021. If you don't have a basis in Linux and stuff like that, forget it. You got to get that first before you'll ever understand what we're talking about. And then we'll make a move over. Package manager, yes. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn the music on again, and I'm going to answer some chat, and you should see the stream drop, and I'll pick it up a little bit later, and we'll be going out for a run.